We did the bad books list. It was a lot of fun. I need to be on a flight in like less than 8 hours, so we need to do the best books of the year list, and it needs to be quick, and it needs to be sharp, and it needs to convince you to read all these books in the least amount of time possible. There was going to be honorable mentions, but I just don't have time for that now. Those may come in another video at another time, but for now I just want to focus on the 10 best books. Technically there's 11. The 10 best books I read in 2023 as decided by myself, because I'm the one that rated these 5 stars and I'm the one that scripted this video. I can't believe how far I've come. In 2022, you guys, I logged 7 books on Goodreads for the entire year. This year I've logged 70, and there's like, it's only the 21st of December. I've times what I read last year by 10, and I'm gonna read more than that. And I was lucky enough to find new favorite books like along the way while I was doing that. So let's just get into it, huh? These are the 10 best books I read in 2023. Starting off with number 10, which is The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. And it's going to be difficult for me to talk about this book because I barely remember a thing about it, and I mean that in the best way possible. This book is like a fever dream. It is like Midsummer meets summer camp meets my personal weird obsession with bees. This book is about a non-binary teenager called Mars, and they and their sister used to go to this summer camp. They're quite well off, I think, and they used to go together to this rich kid summer camp, basically. And Mars stopped going years ago because they didn't fit in, but their sister kept going and fell into this group of really popular girls called the Honeys. And something went down at that camp that made Mars's sister, how do I put this delicately, kind of go insane and try to murder Mars in the middle of the night. And Mars is like, well, why the hell did my sister do that? I guess I'm gonna have to return to the summer camp I vowed I'd never return to and work out just what the hell is going on in there. And for me, this was just totally gripping. The story is so fast paced. Ryan LaSala knows the power of a short chapter. This is a short chapter household. Okay, we are here for a short chapter. We are here for getting to the fucking point. But even outside of that, it just had this beautiful, ethereal, dream-like quality to it. And it got me thinking that, like, I don't think, besides this, I've ever read a YA horror book before. And it just seems like such a concept that's just like ripe for the taking in terms of horror content. Because being a teenager is terrifying. It is. The ending took me by surprise, but then in retrospect also seemed inevitable. I don't know, I just think that's like kind of what you want out of any story. So yeah, this book is good. And Ryan LaSala is hilarious on the internet. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm probably going to read whatever he publishes next. Number 9, we're getting into the niche section. And that's because number 9 is All the Feels by Olivia Dade, and I think we just need to call a spade and be honest about what this is. This is Jamie and Brienne fan fiction that someone wrote and got published, and I'm here for that. If it can happen to the Raylos, why can't it happen to us? Olivia Dade, I want to know what your Reddit username is. Are you in the Jamie and Brienne forum? I just want to talk. This book is loosely the sequel to, spoiler alert, by Olivia Dade. They center on the same fictional fantasy TV show. And the series is about the actors on the show, the male actors on the show, falling in love with normal women, which I think, you know, I don't need to spell out to you why that's appealing. She's plus size. They're both, you know, established adult characters rather than 20-year-olds. Olivia Dade knew what she was doing. This book is about Alex, who is one of the stars of the show. He kind of has a bad reputation. I think right before the book starts, he's just been in a bar fight and he's constantly at war with the writers and creators on the show, Miss Olivia Dade, came with quite a few things to say, almost all of which I agree with. Basically, the guys that run the show, they decide, Alex, you need like a live-in babysitter. Man, we need to keep you on the rails. And one of the producers, he's like, my cousin Lauren is a psych ward nurse, so she knows how to handle really, really crazy stuff. Yeah, so these two are kind of thrust together, and then they thrust together. It really, really gives like the essence of the Jamie Brienne relationship, which is that she's very sensible and capable, he's annoying, and that's why they work so well together. I know this probably doesn't deserve 5 stars. I know that. Even if it is garbage, it's my kind of garbage. And I think I should be able to have a spot on this list that's just dedicated to my kind of garbage. It's my best books of the year, not the bloody completely objective 10 best books of the year video.
Yeah, well, this is a rock concert, not the bleeding splish splash show.
I won't be answering any further questions. Number 8 is another very niche book, a book that I'm not expecting to show up on a lot of other people's lists, at least on YouTube, and that is Raw Dog, The Naked Truth About Hot Dogs by Jamie Loftus. Yes, the number 8 pick on the list of me, a vegetarian, is a non-fiction book about hot dogs. You may know Jamie Loftus from the Bechdel Cast podcast, her other like standalone podcasting endeavors, being a stand-up comedian, writing for TV. I know her because I'm in a parasocial relationship with her. And maybe this book only hit so hard for me because I am such a big fan of her, but I think it's really cool and I think it's really funny. It's basically exactly what it sounds like. It is the recount of Jamie Loftus and her boyfriend going on a cross-country road trip to try all the regional styles of hot dog across America. It's like a Bill Bryson travel book, but like if he slayed. Look at that, isn't that fun? And like I said, I'm not someone who eats hot dogs. I kind of bought this book out of like obligation as a fan, but then I listened to the audiobook through like 2 whole times and then bought a physical copy and then I read it again. It's just really funny. It makes me laugh every time. It made me want to be a travel writer for a brief second. And I think if this in any way sounds like something that you could potentially be interested in, you should pick it up. Specifically, I think you should listen to the audiobook because Jamie Loftus reads it herself, so you're getting all the correct inflections, like you're getting the jokes the way they were meant to hit, and it's about hot dogs. But also America and what makes its working class communities cool. And that's pretty dang darn doodly dope, if I do say so myself. Moving swiftly onwards, because thinking about hot dogs is kind of making me sick. So let's talk about something that also made me feel sick. My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. Look, the girlies that get it. And the girlies that don't. And unfortunately, I'm one of the girlies who gets it. I read Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh this year, and I did not enjoy it. It's actually in my worst books of the year video, but then I bought this anyway because I had a good feeling about it. That good feeling was I liked the pink color that's on the cover, but I also thought that, you know, the 40% of people that have read it who have liked it can't be wrong. If there's a correct minority opinion to have on a book, I will have it. And I do. I think this book is great. And now I think about it every day when I walk to the 7-Eleven by my house to buy coffee, even though I live in arguably the best city to get coffee in the world. They just don't judge me there. Again, this is a book about exactly what it sounds like. The protagonist of this book decides she's kind of done with living. And that sounds bad, and that's because it is. No one ever tells you that, like, growing up and being a gorgeous, gorgeous girl is really, really hard and depressing. And so the protagonist decides that, yeah, she's kind of done with everything. She wants to just take a year off to do absolutely nothing. And by absolutely nothing, she just means like finding a psychiatrist that will prescribe her a whole bunch of sleeping pills so she can basically just exist in a fugue state for like a year, and I've got to say I see the appeal. This video is not a cry for help. Look, it's no secret if you know me personally that I've kind of had a bad year, all things considered, and maybe this was a case of a book hitting at exactly the right time. But if that's the case, I'm glad that it hit when it did. I think it's funny. I think it's insightful. For better or worse, I think it's relatable. It's just a weird book about how much it sucks to be an adult. And I wasn't lying when I said I think about it every goddamn day. But if we're really going to talk about how hard it is to be a girl, we would be remiss not to include the number 6 book, and that's Sadie by Courtney Summers. This book shattered me to my core. It's a couple of years old at this point, so you may have heard of it, but if you haven't, Sadie is a book about the titular Sadie, teenager who has grown up. She's had a pretty rough life. She's grown up in a trailer park with kind of an unfit mother, sexually abusive and just generally abusive, stepfather at one point. And at the start of the book, we know that her little sister is dead, and Sadie thinks that stepfather is responsible. And what follows is the story of her going cross-country, trying to track him down, to seek her revenge, take him out. And she's going to do that, or she's going to die in the attempt. And following along after her is a podcast producer who has just become like us in a way, like the reader in a way, has just become sort of like entranced with her story and is trying to work out where she is and what happened to her and what happened to her sister. And so there's like the transcripts of the podcast interspersed with Sadie telling us her own story. And I don't know what to say. It's just really well done. I love books. I love podcasts. And I don't think they're always, when they're combined, I don't think it always works. But in this case, I think it really does. This is another book where I would definitely recommend listening to the audiobook, right? Because then you're getting the full effect of those podcast elements. And the version I listened to, which I assume is the only version, has a full voice cast. And it's just a really well-rounded story experience. I think this was the first time I have cried reading a book in years. I don't know. I was just really touched by the story of Sadie. So many young people slip through the cracks, have terrible things happen to them, and don't get their story told. And I think it's admirable of Courtney Summers to shine a light on that. And I don't want to say too much about it, but I applaud her for the ending she served up, because I think it was very realistic. And that's all I'm going to say about it. You should read it. You should just read it. Oh my God, we are at the top 5, and we would be remiss if we did not talk about My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, the book that turned me into a Grady Hendrix stan. And so far, I think this is his best work. I've been chasing the high of this with every book of his ever since I read it. It changed my life. The last chapter is unfortunately a little bit corny. Otherwise, this would be the perfect book. As an author, how you get me to read your book is you draw me in with the promises of, as we've seen from this list, stories about girlhood. And how you get me to stay is you make it a story about weird girlhood. You make it a creepy story about girlhood. The story is set in the 80s, and it's about Abby and Gretchen, and they are BFFLs. They are best friends for life. And their childhoods are like super idyllic until one summer, I think it's like they decide to hang out on someone's like boat on the river. What they were doing kind of isn't important. But I don't know, they're hanging out with a bunch of girls and they decide to take acid. I don't know, they're out in the woods on the water. Something weird happens in the woods that night when they're on the acid. Gretchen gets lost in the woods, and then when she comes back, there's no other way to put it. She's weird. She's acting creepy. She doesn't eat. She doesn't sleep. She smells real bad. That's literally a plot point. And because it's the 80s, Abby's like, oh my God, my best friend must be possessed. I mean, it's literally the satanic panic. Like, my mum saw it on 60 Minutes. Like, she's defo possessed by devil magic. And like, we know, right? Like, that can't possibly be true. That's crazy. But how else do you explain it? I guess you're just gonna have to read this book and find out the truth. I think what I loved so much about this, apart from the fact that, like, it's a book about weird girlhood, is that it just really captured the feeling of, I think just when you're a teenager in general, but when you're a teenage girl specifically, you love your friends so much you would die for them. I think that's a good, I don't know, I just think that's a good thing for a book to be about. More spooky girlhood books, please. For the number 4 spot, you are so lucky because you actually get 2 books for the price of 1 spot. And that's because I could not split the 2 books in this series. I could not split Her Majesty's Royal Coven and The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. I'm not a series girly. You know, I'm not as young as I used to be. I can't commit to reading a whole bunch of books, like one right after the other. Are you kidding me? What if it starts sucking? Like, what if it never gets finished? I've been burnt before, but these are so good. I literally started making my list of books I'm excited for in 2024 the other day, and I was like, before I'd even looked up the title, the 3rd one's coming out and it's called Human Rights, RITES, by the way. But before I even knew what it was called, I was like, well, number 1 on this list is Untitled Juno Dawson HMRC entry number 3, because that's going to be my most anticipated book of the year. And if for some reason you haven't heard of these books, I mean, what are you doing? Get it together. But basically what these are is a British trans woman's answer to J.K. Rowling, which, you know, I think takes a lot of courage and bravery to put out there. And it takes even more charisma, uniqueness, nerve and talent to do that and have the books actually be really good. To do that and have like all the world building be really smart and make sense, and have it be about really dynamic and interesting group of characters who I love, who I would like I would die for some of them, by the way. Like, you can see the parallels, right? These books are like about kind of what the Wizarding world would be like if it existed, when you really think about it. Like, when you really think about what it would actually be like if there was an entire secret branch of the UK government seeing over their magical population, because that's a thing that actually exists. What would the war be like? What would the school be like? Racial issues and stuff, would they like, what would that actually be like? It's not just good as a commentary on one of the most popular pieces of media of all time. They're just really good. Like, they're just really good stories in their own right. They're just so much better than I ever expected them to be. This is the first book I read this year, and only 4 other books have topped it in that entire time. I remember reading this for the first time because I was on a plane and the ending made me gasp out loud in public on an aeroplane. And I had nowhere to go. I just had to sit with that for hours. And frankly, I don't think I'm explaining these books very well. Frankly, they're just very, very good. And I think you should read them. Criminal. This wasn't even nominated for a Goodreads Choice Award. Criminal. None of the other books on that list can hold a candle to this book. I haven't read those books, but I know that for a fact. I know that in my heart and soul. Why are these books not more popular? I just don't understand. Sorry, I got a bit weird there for a second. My number 3 book, which would have been my number 2 book had I not read the book that is now number 2 a week ago and had that throw this entire list on its head. This is the book that would have been my second best book of the year. And that's Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. The easiest 5 stars I have ever given a book. When I tell you I flew through this, when I tell you this book is compulsively readable, I'm not lying. The top 2 books on this list, like, got into my head for days. They made me think. They made me reevaluate. Whereas what this book did, I had no thoughts. I didn't have any questions after reading this book. I just read it. I was like, I immediately understand what you're trying to do. And I love it, Kylie Reid. Thank you so much. This book is about Amira. She's a young black woman, kind of unsure of what she wants to do in life. She kind of has like a dead-end job, note-taking she kind of hates. And then someday she's a nanny for this like pretty affluent white family. Loves their kid, but like, it's a lot, you know. I think a lot of us would feel uncomfortable in that kind of setting, kind of in a stage of life where she's like, look, I really love hanging out with this kid, but I could be making a lot more money. Instead of helping one kid, I could be helping the world, you know. And then a thing happens where like unfortunately, it's a thing I can imagine happening in the real world, where this woman in a supermarket sees Amira out with Briar, the little white girl, the kid, and starts filming them. It's like, oh my god, you kidnapped this kid. And that moment sort of goes viral. And like during all of that, Amira meets this like white guy who's sticks up for her in the store. They kind of start dating, and then everyone's lives kind of start unraveling from there. Amira, this guy, the white family. It is a good time to read. It is a compulsively interesting read. This book knows exactly what it's trying to say. It is doing a similar thing to Little Fires Everywhere by Celestine, where it's like, oh, you know how upper middle class white families are evil? We're gonna absolutely take them down a peg with this book. That's something I'm always here for, and I think this book did the best job of that I've ever seen. I borrowed it from my library and read it on my phone, and then I was like, well, I simply must buy a copy because I'm ready to commit to this book for the rest of my life. And now I own Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid, and she lives here with me. As I said, number 2 was kind of a late contender. I only read it last week, but it completely took my world by storm. I don't own a copy, but I soon will, although I cannot imagine rereading it anytime soon. It was extremely heavy. And that's The Last House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward. I stayed up until 3 a.m. I can't even remember the last time I stayed up that late to finish a book. Well, actually I can. I was 14. It was 2007. That's when it was. This book is so hard for me to kind of categorize and explain to you. It's kind of part thriller, part horror, part absolute mind-bending weirdness. All you really need to know going in is that there's multiple POVs in this book. One is a woman who has just moved to Needless Street because it is near where her sister went missing when they were children. She wants to work out who took her sister, what happened. And then the other POVs in this book are a weird guy called Ted who lives on Needless Street, who's kind of suspicious, and his cat is the other point of view, and sometimes his daughter Lauren, but she's not always there. It's a really weird setup, and I think you should go into it not knowing much more. Can't really I feel like I can't really sell it to you without spoiling major chunks of it. But this book made me think about the power of the human brain and the endurance of the human spirit, and also the endurance of the cat spirit. It made me want to get a cat and name the cat Olivia. And it did all of that in a horror novel. I know somewhere Stephen King is quaking. I just realised the pen I've been waving around has changed colour, and that's kind of a reference to this book, and I didn't even do it on purpose. And just like the way this book is written, like it could have gone, I think, into a really dangerous place. What it explores, what it goes into, could have been done in, I think, a much messier, more problematic way. It could have perpetuated, I think, some pretty harmful stereotypes about certain groups of people, and I don't think it does that at all. My earring just fell out of my ear onto me, and it scared the living shit out of me. I was so scared reading this book, and then that happens while I'm talking about it. I thought I was dying. I thought I was gonna look down and see the biggest cockroach I've ever seen in my life. My only other word of advice going in is check every single trigger warning. There's some stuff in this book that's really upsetting. I mean, it's a book about murder. It's a book about a murder and a missing kid. Like, you know it's gonna be dark going in, but it's really dark. I think it's worth it, personally. The Last House on Needless Street by Katrina Ward. And we're gonna cap this off with a book that I think you should know even less about going in, if that's possible. It is just so beautiful. And that's Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. When I read this, I was like, I knew this was going to be my favourite book of the year. Lana Del Rey was right when she said, when you know, you know. When you're old, you're old. Kind of makes me laugh. I can't believe I'm sitting here and telling you that I read a book this year that, like, changed my entire worldview. I've thought about getting a tattoo about this book, which is not something I can believe I'm sitting here considering. It's not going to take up a lot of your time. It's not very long. The cover on this hardback is very thick. It's not long. It's 245 pages. You can read it in one sitting. And I think you should just do it. If not for me, then for you. Just go in blind. You'll see everybody talking about this book online saying, just go into it knowing nothing. And that's not even a cop-out. I don't think I could explain this book to you if I tried. Piranesi is a man, at least we think he is. He lives in a house that seems endless. It stretches on for as far as he knows about. He's been there for as long as he can remember, and he's never found a way out. The house is empty. Apart from him, some skeletons of other people he's found along the way, and another man who he calls the Other, who turns up, I think it's about once a week, to talk to Piranesi and get him to help him with his science experiments, and that's it. When this book begins, that's the entire scope of Piranesi's world, and it just slowly starts to seem like maybe there's more to this big empty house that he's always lived in. That doesn't sound like a compelling narrative, really. At least it didn't to me. And now here I am, and there I was, sitting on my couch, sobbing, reading this book. It's just honestly one of the most magical books I've ever read. It felt like digging up your own memories from childhood and reconsidering them. And it reminded me to always look at the world with like a sense of childlike wonder. I don't know what to tell you. It completely changed the way I view life. Yeah, I just want to get a tattoo about this book, and I'll probably think about it until the day I die. And I can envisage a world where, we come back in 2033 and I'm here with a face full of Botox telling you that I'm counting down my top 10 books of the decade, and I can envisage this still being number one quite easily. So yeah, guys, I am freaking exhausted. It's been a long day. It's been a long year. It's been a long 30 years of life. It's been a long video. And so I think I'm going to wrap it up about here. Feel free to let me know what your favourite book of the year was in the comments. I mean, unless you say this one, you're wrong. I could use some reading recommendations for what to read now. I have a suitcase to pack, garbage to take out, a shower to shower, a sleep to sleep. So I'm going to go do those things. But Happy New Year, guys. Happy Christmas. Happy reading. And I will see you on the other side of 2023. Bye.